Rabbit judge for that one.
We are good to go.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Monday, July 22nd Lawrence Douglas County Planning Commission meeting. To go over the rules of the meeting, the hybrid rules of the meeting, I'm going to turn it over to Drew.
Yes, good evening. My name is Drew Bilby, planner, and I will be helping to facilitate the Zoom video portion of the meeting. We will work alongside the chair to facilitate the meeting proceedings. I have a few housekeeping items for this hybrid meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you are not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. Unless you are participating during the meeting, please turn your video off. This allows the active meeting participants to be seen on screen. You will still be able to hear the meeting. When you are participating, please turn your video on. If you have any trouble, you can send a chat to me. The city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And now I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Drew. So to begin, let's talk about the minutes. Does anybody have any questions, or are we okay to have a motion on the minutes?
Move approval.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second?
I abstain, but can we have a vote on, all in favor, please?
Yep.
Aye, it's unanimous.
And I have to abstain also.
Oh,
I was
okay,
absent
you're
as
also
well.
absent. Okay, two abstentions, sorry. All right, now to committee reports. The first one is, does anybody have an update on the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board?
We met last week, and the issue was approving from 14th Street to 23rd Street on Massachusetts, turning it into 2 lanes and a bicycle lane on each side, and then a center turn lane.
I see.
They had one bid to do that.
Oh, wow, okay, thank you. And any land development code updates?
Steerco met last Thursday, submitted a number of fairly significant changes that pushed our planned release of the final from the 19th to hopefully it'll be yet today. And then we have the full meeting on Wednesday dedicated to this topic.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, do we have any written communications from the public?
All written communications that were received by the deadline were included as part of your packet.
Thank you. Do we have any written communications from staff, planning commissioners, or other commissioners?
You have a memo from staff that was it was related to your mid-month meeting about meetings and topics, and I don't know if the commission would like to table that or have a discussion about that under miscellaneous new or old business, but just wanted to call attention to that memo as part of your packet this evening.
Thank you. If the commission is okay with it, I'd like to move this to the last item in the agenda, just because I'd like to get the public's work done first. Does anybody have any reason to not do it last? Is everybody okay with that?
Good idea.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any actions of waiver requests made by the city engineer?
None this evening.
Any ex parte communications to disclose? Seeing none. Any abstentions from agenda items by commissioners? All right, and now it's time for general public comment. Is there anybody here in the room or online that has anything to say about things not on tonight's agenda? Drew, does it look like anybody online?
Nope.
Okay.
Seeing none.
All right. If there is none, we're going to move into our regular agenda. And the first item today will be presented by Becky Pepper.
All right, thank you very much.
go ahead.
I don't have much of a presentation for you. I really just kind of want to make an introduction to this item for you. And this is for the capital improvement plan for 2025 through 2029, also known as, referred to as the CIP. So this item is before you tonight because of there is a state statute that it requires that the Planning Commission review the PIP for conformance with our comprehensive plan. This is an annual review, and it includes projects that should be constructed during or started during the next 5 fiscal years, and like I said, ending in 2029. The CIP is a tool that helps guide city investments in constructing our public facilities and utilities. Capital, just a little background on what a capital improvement project is. They're defined as having a minimum estimated cost of $100,000 and a life expectancy of at least 2 years. Some examples of a capital improvement project can include such things as an expansion of a public building, new city infrastructure, acquisition of land for public uses, planning and engineering costs, and sidewalk and street construction and maintenance. So one thing to note that as part of the CIP process, projects that are on the list were reviewed by a CIP committee that was comprised of city staff. The committee reviews projects under a number of criteria, and one of those being with its compliance or with its conformance with long-range plans, which include the comprehensive plan as well as others. So your role tonight is not necessarily to recommend certain projects or funding amounts. It's really just to review those projects and their conformance with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. And as I mentioned, as part of the evaluation, staff has also gone through that review process, and we found that all the projects on the list do conform with Plan 2040. So given that, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission make a finding that the projects presented in the 2025 through 2029 Capital Improvement Plan are in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan and forward a recommendation to the City Commission for approval. I also wanted to note that we do have Allie Porter on our Zoom call. She's a budget manager, so she can help if you have any questions specific to projects. So with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Becky. Do we have any public comment on this item? Anybody online, Drew, that you see?
Nope, seeing none.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. Does anybody have any questions on? Go ahead. Go ahead. Commissioner Eldridge.
I have a couple of questions. I noticed in the reports of the CIP, there were 2 of them that were resident requested. One of them had to do with a bike trail, and that was the 000001, the Atchison Creek Bikeway. I noticed that other bike trails that were referred to would be referred to the priority bikeway network on the Lawrence Bikes Plan. And I was wondering if this particular suggestion about the Atchison Creek had been through that same process.
I can start, and Allie can correct me when I go wrong here, but usually when we receive a citizen-requested CIP project, it does go through the same rigor as what we do for other projects. So it does go through the evaluation. It's looked at in terms of the plans and those kind of matrices that are involved in that one. So to the best of my knowledge, yes, it was put to the same rigor as other projects that would have been brought forward as part of just the staff or the city side-initiated CIP.
So it's not jumping the line, it's just in with the mix of all the bikeway projects and will get funded then appropriately.
Correct. And so what happens in the CIP, and this is where Allie wishes she had the button to turn off my microphone, is that you will get into projects that are both funded and unfunded in the CIP. So there'll be a number of projects that will have been put in there that are not funded, and there'll be projects that will be put in there and funded. And the funded is how you do your prioritization, is based on how do you how fast do you want to move on those, and is the money allocated to those? And if a project is unfunded, it would sit on the CIP until either it is funded or sometimes they fall off just as they become unnecessary based on other project work.
Okay. And I have that same question about the last one, which is the Alvamar golf course, and it does not have a number, it's just XX. And I was wondering if it had been through the same rigor as the Lawrence Park and Recreation Master Plan?
I believe so at that point, because it would have also been a citizen-initiated item, so it would have been reviewed, but it wouldn't have been in the same vein as what the Parks and Rec master planning process would have been, because that would have been separate, running on its own other track as part of that. So it would have been in the CIP review, but not necessarily in as part of the master plan review process for the Parks and Rec.
So it would be a Parks and Recreation plan that has not, will it go through the same planning process as the other ones that are in the CIP report?
It would go through the same reviews, but because there is I think we may be talking in two different tracks here. It would have gone through the same reviews as what the CIP would have had, but concurrently, Parks and Rec is doing a comprehensive plan right now for all their facilities, and I don't know if that was something they evaluated as part of their comprehensive planning process. So I was talking about two different tracks, but in CIP, it would have been in that review process.
In the CIP review process, but not yet through the Park and Rec process?
Correct.
And will it go through the Park and Rec process then in the future?
I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know about what their details on their comprehensive plan off the top of my head.
The only thing I'm wondering about is whether there's any one that kind of jumps the line and then would get funded ahead of others that have been through the comprehensive planning process for Park and Rec.
And that's a possibility, but that'd be a question for the City Commission as part of their funding discussions and their policy review. So it'd be at the prerogative of the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
The only one that sticks out in my mind, and maybe it's because it's listed under unfunded, that it's not jumping the line anywhere. But how is the Affordable Housing Advisory Board part of a capital improvement plan? Because it looks like it's funding for the board itself.
It's actually a request made by the Affordable Housing Advisory Board for funds to go through their allocation and notice the funding opportunity process. So it's not for the fund itself,
right,
it's
okay.
for the process.
All right, simply just semantics. All right.
Well, I don't have a question, but I'd make a comment. I'm supportive of forwarding this on with a recommendation to approve. I've watched City make a couple of different presentations, one to City Commission and then a second one redacted to the EDC. And in every case, I didn't find anything, including in my own review, that was inconsistent with comprehensive plan. So I'd support, be happy to make a motion if everybody's ready for that. I'd move that we move to forward the City of Lawrence 25 to 29 capital improvement plan for conformance with the city's comprehensive plan to the City Commission with a recommendation to approve.
You have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Baroto, did you vote in the affirmative? Aye, yep.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. All right, thank you. And moving on to item number 2, and I think the presenter is Ellie Mullins.
Good evening. Ellie Mullins, Planning and Development Services. This next item contains 2 right-of-way width variances as required by the subdivision design standards, both for minor arterial streets. One is for East 19th Street and the other for Haskell Avenue. The variance request is related to the minor subdivision Homewood Gardens Subdivision Edition Number 1, which proposes to combine 4 platted lots into 2 platted lots at the corner of East 19th Street and Haskell Avenue, as well as kind of shifting their shared lot line to the east to accommodate an existing structure. Both streets are classified as minor arterials, requiring 100 feet of total right-of-way. Both streets only have 60 feet of right-of-way in this location. The standards require that half the necessary right-of-way be dedicated through the subdivision process. The applicant requests a variance from this requirement and asks to maintain the existing right-of-way for both Haskell Avenue and East 19th Street. The city engineer has reviewed the variance request and is supportive of maintaining the existing widths with the condition that a 10-foot permanent utility and pedestrian easement be dedicated along both frontages. This is to accommodate existing and future infrastructure, such as utilities. There's a fire hydrant, and then the existing sidewalk along Haskell Avenue. While additional public access is needed to access these elements, there are not current infrastructure needs that would require the dedication to be public right-of-way, such as street widening. As well, utilities internal to the lots were constructed out of the dedicated easement that was dedicated in the 30s. So an additional easement internal to the lots will be required, further reducing that buildable area. The 10-foot utility easement accommodates the infrastructure needs while maintaining existing setbacks and development pattern. Staff has concluded that the proposed variance meets all three of the approval criteria listed in section 2813G of the subdivision regulations. Discussion of those were included in tonight's packet. Based on the findings presented in the variance memo, staff recommends approving the variance request subject to the condition that a 10-foot permanent utility and pedestrian easement be dedicated along both Haskell Avenue and East 19th Street frontages. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I believe the applicant is online tonight.
Is that Mr. Jess or Mr. Knoll?
Might be, I think, Adria Burks from the applicant team
okay.
is on. I don't know if she'd like to speak or not, but.
Would you like to, would the applicant like to add anything to Ellie's presentation? Is that Mrs. Burks? Is that right?
I don't know if they're connected to audio or not. Oh, there we go.
Oh. I can't see. We can't see you or hear you if you're trying to say something.
Ms. Burks, and I don't need to say anything further.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, any public comment on this item?
I'm not.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Sure.
Good evening, I'm Michael Allman. I am the Vice President of Brook Creek Neighborhood Association. This project is in our neighborhood. Even if this requested right-of-way variance seems reasonable to you, and I think it might, there are any number of other serious impediments why this should not go forward. And I say this as a member of the Land Development Steering Committee in favor of more density and affordable housing, and my neighborhood has stated position about that as well. However, one of the issues that seemed odd is that the staff report did not comment or ask about the length of time the property is vacant. Maybe that's not part of a variance request, but there's a number of reasons why. And considering that a corner lot is highly desirable, particularly for commercial, why has this stayed vacant? When it was platted 92 years ago, it has stayed vacant as Homewood Gardens. Also, the owner of Haskell Square Shopping Center investigated about 10 years ago to expand the shopping center and backed out. Parks and Recreation is not interested in making it a park. There's a park right across the street. There's a number of reasons why. But one of the main reasons, there is a huge tree in the middle of that they refer to as a simply 25-foot tree. It's a 105-foot diameter crown, I think, a slippery elm tree. The champion tree in Kansas is only 76 feet crown. The girth of this tree is well, it's bigger than the champion tree. I think it's 13 feet 4 inches. In spite of the density and affordable housing, I think a treasure like that cannot be ignored and we can't just sacrifice everything for affordable housing. But the main reason this project should not go forward is that it's in conflict with access management standards. Access management requires, it shall have access to a site 300 feet from an intersection on an arterial and a collector. This is a minor arterial. The project is 150 feet to the east and west, and only.
Michael, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap. I'm sorry.
Pardon?
You have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it is way under the distance, and these are, it's a truck route along there, high traffic, and it simply violates that. So I can't imagine with all that a simple street width variance is really the issue here, although it's issue on your agenda tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Would the applicant like to respond to that? Can't hear you. Sorry.
Patrick's on the property that abuts 19th Street. Their property is not going to be developed at all. From their perspective, we're trying to deal with an encroachment and addressing easements. The city has a drainage system that is outside the easement, and our interest is getting this corrected so that the utilities that are provided are within easements and the boundaries no longer have encroachments. That's the Patrick's interest in this. They don't own the land that is being proposed to be developed, and they're concerned merely about getting the paper so it's consistent with the practice on that property.
Okay, thank you. Sir, did you have?
Rich Minder with Success by Six Coalition of Douglas County. With respect to Michael Lohman's comments, this is a minor subdivision in order to correct an encroachment. And following that, it's a variance request that staff has worked with us on an arrangement that is mutually acceptable to address easements for utilities. How the property gets developed is another process, and that could involve discussions of trees and could involve discussions of uses, could involve rezoning, could involve any number of things. But for the purposes of this, this process here is a minor subdivision.
Thank you. Are you the property owner, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any public comment online, Drew? Besides.
Does not look like, nope.
Okay, if there's nothing else to add, I'm going to bring it back to the commission for discussion. Does anybody have any questions?
Question for staff. The 60-foot right-of-way variance, is that consistent with the properties to the north and to the west and the south? Or would this just be a special little island of 60 foot?
There is reduced right-of-way throughout the corridor. Other properties that have been kind of greenfield development sites have dedicated half of the required amount, so about 10 feet, when they have gone through subdivision processes. In this case, at the intersection, there isn't necessarily the need for right-of-way, and to accommodate the additional easements that are going to have to be required because of city infrastructure not being constructed in the original easements. This would be in line with the existing development pattern around.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other, go ahead, Commissioner Eldridge.
I have a question for the staff, and that is the difference between the right-of-way and the easements. Substantially, the easements are limited then to just utilities and pedestrian ways. But if we wanted to widen that street, we would have needed a right-of-way to do any widening. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so why are we not just saying, okay, 60 feet's enough, but we'll take it as additional right-of-way instead of additional easements?
The easements allow, they are within the property, so they allow the existing development pattern to continue in the area. Do you mind rephrasing your question a little bit?
Well, I'm trying to understand why we're using easements rather than just an increased right-of-way.
So typically what will happen is you won't ask for right-of-way if you're not going to be doing a large or substantial improvement like a road bed or an improvement like that. And what you want to do with the easement is that retains the property line that generates the setback for the property. So it allows the individual to have more use of that space while also giving the protections for the subgrade or below grade equipment underground. So you might see the storm drain kind of at the street edge, but all the pipe and, culverts and things may need somewhere to go. They'd be in the easement, but then that would retain the property for the owner so that they would be able to generate setbacks from that and have a different setback than what they would normally do. So it's kind of a benefit to both parties in that sense, as it allows the owner to have a little bit more of their land for that setback purposes, but also protect that subgrade infrastructure for the future for the city.
But this is a variance from the code requirement that would have required right-of-way?
Yes.
Okay, and is that standard just along these two roadways to use easements rather than right-of-way, or is that standard throughout all the all the roads in the city?
It was an option in this case because additional greater infrastructure was not identified as needed.
So
it is a standard practice of MSO in instances where they have situations like this where they would opt for an easement and not for more right-of-way. So it is not particular to this part. It's a citywide practice that MSO uses.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Be happy to make a motion, and I'll just preface the motion by saying that I understand and respect the concerns, and I sure hope that when if a project comes, that conversation about that tree is had. Until then, though, the item before us is just the variance. There's 2 votes, right?
2 votes.
First one is approve the variance request of minor subdivision plat 24-1005 to allow for reduced right-of-way width of 60 feet for portion of Haskell Avenue per staff's report.
Should we just go ahead and
With the provision of the 10-foot.
10-foot permanent?
I'll say per staff's report.
Yeah.
Staff's report. Do we have a second? Any discussion?
You want me to read the whole thing?
Just a clarification on that one. So it's the motion you're moving for the first one there, which is the variance for 2810E51 for the subdivision regulations for the right-of-way width variances is the first one listed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I jumped down to the bottom one first. Sorry about that.
Let's make sure I had the right order. Is that, you don't have to motion them in a particular order there? If you want to continue with that, that's fine. But
Well, let's do,
in the right one.
because I'm already in it. Wait a second, if that's okay. All right.
I just have one question. Mr. Allman asked about the 300-foot access. Jeff, is that what is that? What is he referring to? Do we know what?
Municipal Services and Operations has access standards for how far a break in the curb line can occur within the radius of an intersection there. And there are waivers and determinations that are made by the city engineers as part of that process in case there are properties that don't have the ability to distance out away from that distance. Now, I don't know the details of where MSL or the engineering requirements that are related to that one, but that is something that is empowered to the city engineers as
Sure.
part of it, not part of the variance process.
Sure, understood. Okay, thank you.
It's actually
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's vote. All in favor, aye, please.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
Motion to approve the variance request for minor subdivision plat 24-1005 to allow for a reduced right-of-way width of 60 feet for the portion of East 19th Street, adjacent subject properties per the staff's report.
Have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Entertain a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Unanimous. Hi, Luke.
Hello.
Try the top right corner. The Zoom thing. There you go.
That'll do it. Okay, good evening, everybody. Luke Mortensen, Planner, Planning and Development Services Department. As Chair Duver just noted, the final regular agenda item tonight is a proposed rezoning for a portion of an existing platted tract south of West 31st Street. The request is to rezone the project area from the RS10 district to the RM12 district. So just to note, the property is currently unaddressed at this point, and so it will receive a formal address with the minor subdivision. We're using 3000 West 31st Street as a placeholder address. So the area proposed for rezoning is located south of West 31st Street between Iowa Street and the Castle Curve. As mentioned earlier, this proposed rezoning is for only a portion of a larger parcel. So on the left of the screen, you'll see a large parcel highlighted in teal. This area is legally described as Tract A Cherry Manor subdivision. The area proposed for rezoning is significantly smaller. It's approximately 3 acres, shown in red on the left. If the rezoning is approved, the applicant would submit for an administrative minor subdivision replat to formally carve out that rezoned area from the larger teal highlighted tract. So just to be clear, the applicant is only requesting to rezone approximately 3 acres to the RM12 district. The remainder of the area highlighted in teal would continue to be zoned RS10 district. The applicant's goal is to establish 10 to 12 dwelling units that would be associated with the abutting DECA property and program. You can see a preliminary site plan on page, I think it's 49 of tonight's agenda packet. So a quick note about neighbor notice, just because this one's a little bit different. The city notified property owners within 400 feet of the larger highlighted, the teal property, and then property owners within 1,000 feet in the county, because this is a property that borders both the county and the city. So we only received 1 phone call, no opposition or support, just looking for additional information. So recognizing that this is the final regular agenda item tonight, I'll rely pretty heavily on my analysis in the staff report, but I will touch on a few of the more impactful review criteria. This proposed rezoning area is located within the revised Southern Development Plan area. That is shown on the left image. This adopted sector plan identifies the proposed rezoning area as medium-density residential future land uses. So that revised Southern Development Plan has its own future land use map. This map is pasted in the staff report, and there's also a link if you'd like to go to the map online. Both the comprehensive plan and the land development code define medium-density residential land uses as residential uses with 7 to 15 dwelling units per acre. So the proposed RM12 district would fit squarely within this range. Obviously, the RM12 district permits a maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre. On the right, you'll see a zoomed-in portion of the revised Southern Development Plan's future land use map. The proposed rezoning area is shown in red with the yellow star. You'll see that the base color beneath it is orange. Orange on this map represents the areas planned for future medium-density residential uses. So you can see that a portion of that larger highlighted, teal highlighted area is for medium-density residential.
So the proposed rezoning area was annexed into the city in 1970. It's been vacant since that time. I will make a brief note about the existing RS10 zoning designation. As you're aware, our current land development code has the UR Urban Reserve zoning district. This is our placeholder district for properties when they're annexed into the city before we have an appropriate zoning district identified. Under the city's previous code from 1966, there was no equivalent urban reserve district, and as such, very low-density residential districts like the RS1 from the old code were used as kind of placeholder districts. So that's why this property was zoned RS1 under the old code, and why it automatically converted to the current RS10 district in 2006 with our current land development code. So the existing low-density residential designation is more a result of that rather than a planned vision for low-density residential uses. Finally, this is just the first of several planning and city applications that the applicant would need to submit. We talked about the minor subdivision replat that's required. A major site plan would also be required. That is administrative, but that's where we would go through the landscaping and the parking and the lighting and all of those kind of regular items. So with that, I will note that staff recommends approval of proposed rezoning of 2.99 acres from the RS10 district to the RM12 district based on the findings presented in the staff report. Darren Amon with Bartlett and West is our applicant tonight, and he's joining us on Zoom. Both he and I can answer any questions if you've got them.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to that, Darren?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I'm Darren Amon with Bartlett and West, 544 Columbia Avenue here in Lawrence. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm representing the applicant / owner, which is DECA tonight. They just wanted to have me add that would appreciate your recommendation of approval for this rezoning so we can move forward with the other portions of the process, as Luke mentioned, minor subdivision and site plan. These duplexes that are planned in a future clubhouse will be a much needed transition for folks that currently live in the treatment facility on site. The hope is that when they are through with their time there, they'll be able to transition to these duplexes and roughly would stay there approximately 1 year before, again, transitioning into the community and moving forward. So we feel very strongly this is a great project for the city of Lawrence and will help those folks and individuals using this facility. So I'd be happy to answer any other technical questions, but Luke pretty much covered it, and thank you. Would appreciate your support.
Thank you. Any public comment? Drew, anybody online that has anything to say?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the commission. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
I think this is a terrific project. I'm really excited about it. But I don't understand why it's not an RM12D if the plan is to build duplexes. I would have thought that the zoning would have been for RM12D. Who can help me out with that?
Well, zoning applications are basically at the request of the applicant, and they requested RM12. We kind of discussed a few other zoning districts. We looked at the RMO that was adjacent with the DECA facility. RM12 was at the stage, the pre-application stage was deemed the most appropriate moving forward.
Does the applicant have an explanation as to why it's not RM12D?
Darren Ammon, Bartlett and West. My short answer is we went with staff's recommendation of RM12. We're fine with that. And just, I will note, there's not future duplexes planned any more than what's already going to be on there, which is 5 units. So 2 on each side, there'll be 10 total plus a clubhouse. And they're going to be spaced out. It's not quite your typical subdivision where they're going to be packed in as tight as possible. As you can see, we have 3 acres to get in 5 duplexes and a clubhouse, which is plenty of space. So, but long-winded answer is we went with staff recommendation, and that's how we proceeded forward.
So that would give you a little more flexibility in terms of what you ultimately end up building. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what is the main difference between RM12 and RM12D?
Why don't we ask staff?
So RM12 is multi-dwelling residential, max 12 dwelling units per acre. You could do duplex units. You could do a 12-unit single structure apartment building. The RM12D district is restricted to actual duplex.
Okay, thank you.
And I imagine since they're building the clubhouse on there as well, that the RM12 made more sense because it's not a duplex. I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably so.
It gives them some flexibility.
It gives them a little bit of bend.
I just want to note that I'm pleased to see that this development is, they purposely put it outside the floodplain in this case, so I'm appreciating that.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like a great development, I think. Wonderful.
Thank you for noticing. That was strategic, yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? If not, I entertain a motion.
Oh, I just lost it.
I'm happy to do it.
Sorry.
Approve rezone, I move we approve rezoning Z-24-1002, approximately 2.99 acres from RS10 to RM12, based on the findings presented in the staff report and forwarded to the City Commission with a recommendation for approval.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All right, let's call for a vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you. It's unanimous. And that concludes our regular agenda. And do you guys want to take a break, or do we want to go into the last item? Is everybody good to go? Let's go. Okay. So thank you, Darren. Thank you, Luke. So the last item is how to structure and schedule our land development code meetings between now and the final vote. And I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at the memo that we got from staff. And Jeff, do you want to just kind of go over it, or do you want me to kind of go over what you're saying here?
I'd be happy to.
Please do. Please do.
Apologies, I clicked the wrong X and took the memo off my screen there. So based on the mid-month discussion, we went back and looked at both the room's availability and just the amount of lift it would take us to get to extra meetings on that one. And the reality of it is this room is so constrained that there isn't any real times to do much beyond that. So kind of thinking through the discussion you all had and trying to meet that kind of desired intent of it, what we put forward was a recommendation you see as part of the memo, which is to lengthen your mid-month meeting another 30 minutes. So that'll give you a little bit more time on that side. But to also then allow for public comment at the meeting, if you have public like to comment there, and then also to take written communication as part of that. So you kind of have a little bit of both, as much as we could accommodate with the room constraints and the reality of the technology that we have in there. So I did want to put in there, I put this hopefully at the end of it that makes sense, was anybody can come to any meetings and provide comment and communication. Just because that is the topic of that particular item doesn't mean you can't come to the next meeting and also provide communications too. So if you're unavailable at one meeting, but you can make the next meeting, the members of the public are more than welcome to come and talk and share and also submit comment as part of that. So I didn't want people to feel like if it was topic A was at this time and I can't make it, so I lose my chance to talk about topic A. That's not the case. So we've structured that based upon the City Commission's outline of their expectation of the timeline to kind of get them. That's why you see that kind of beginning next month, where you'll see mid-month, the 2 regular meetings, all the way till the end of September to kind of cover through all the topics. And based upon steering committee's conversation last week, we hope to have that draft to you very soon on what that looks like. But they kind of went in there and made some tweaks. It took a little bit more time than we thought would be in there. But that's really the essence of the memo. And that's just our recommendation. So we just put forward trying to meet the realities of the room and what the commission had expressed the desire for.
So this would, sorry, just wanted to say one thing. So this would specifically be for the August 14th and September 11th Planning Commission mid-month meetings.
Correct.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I just had a question about the structure of those meetings, like when public comment would take place at the beginning of the meeting or at the end of the meeting. And is there a time limit on that? We need to make sure we have time to have a mid-month work session.
And that can really be at the commission's prerogative at that point. I would estimate you'd probably want to retain your 3-minute time limits to kind of have that continuity of that process. In previous iterations of the mid-month, the COVID meetings notwithstanding, the conversation, some of the comment was done at the beginning of the meetings for that purpose, and sometimes it was done at the end of the meetings when it was in person. So there isn't really a good operating practice to that because you don't usually take comments at your mid-month. So it's really probably a conversation point this evening is, would you like to have it at the beginning or towards the tail end of the meeting? Would you like to, retain the 3 minutes and kind of keep with the bylaws? And that's something we did not explore. That was really at the commission and the chair's prerogative and vice chair's prerogative at that point.
So,
Oh, sorry. I know I'm new, but based on my experience with other city commission meetings and even the few meetings that I've been to here, I think it would make sense if our meeting was from 7:30 to 9 like normal, and then the last 30 minutes was reserved for public comment at that 3-minute window. That gives them a chance to hear us discuss the topic at hand and formulate opinions or ideas that they want to additionally add to the conversation. And then we have a 30-minute window, which I imagine at a 7:30 meeting, we're not going to have 10 plus people sitting in line waiting, but you never know.
Right.
Again, and I know I'm new, so I apologize for throwing out an idea that might not be logical, but that was my immediate thought when I read this.
This is all new.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You were going to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, well, question, we are in each of those meetings intending to take a topic area.
Mm-hmm.
That people can talk about anything they want to talk about, of course, but we are trying to gear it that way, so that would maybe narrow some of the feedback that was received.
Yeah, and the topics, you might get through one a little differently than the other, and one might kind of go into another conversation. It's hard to, we kind of put a guesstimate on that as part of the conversation, but there's, there is some fluidity to that, as if your conversation needs to run longer, we go to another meeting. And do remember, your last meeting is a wrap-up meeting, so anything that kind of didn't quite fit in that time slot, we do have that other meeting at the back end of the last meeting in September, which I think is the 25th, to kind of go through some of those things, or if there's something that you wanted to put a pin in and return back at the end of the conversation, you do have that time for that reserved.
And are these mid-months going to be presentations and then discussion, or is it just a discussion, like from the consultant?
It's a great question. We hadn't quite formulated on what that would look like, but I would estimate it'd probably be more of a, here's what the code is, here's where the code's evolved to. Do you have any questions? That's something we're still trying to work through too a little bit as we're starting to piece this all together too.
And we could probably play it by ear. I mean, if there are 10 plus people in the room, maybe the Q&A is a little longer than, so we just kind of, played by ear. But
it was just off the top, not off the top, I thought about it earlier, but I just wanted to mention it, sorry.
Yeah.
So would that be different than our meetings here, whereas we can't cut off public comment at these meetings? If there are 20 people, 30 people in the audience, they all get 3 minutes, but at the mid-month.
Would it keep going past 9:30, if potentially?
Well, there is another event in the room that usually starts taking over around 10 o'clock, so we'd kind of run into a hard limit there. So that might be something that would be a little bit of
some natural pressure to end it. But
some natural point.
Just open the meeting saying, we have to be out here by 10.
And that's going to be okay to do.
9:30, by 9:30.
I think it's probably more, you might have to tailor how much conversation you have if you want to accommodate all the public comment in there. And that's probably, as you all know, the mid-month meetings are run by the vice chair. And so the vice chair probably had a prerogative. If there was a lot of people to comment, there might be a reordering to accommodate that. And so there's not a hard and fast in there as you typically would have as your bylaws with the running order of a business meeting. So.
It's also possible, I suppose, that we could start public comment earlier if we've...
Well, that's, I think, what Jeff is saying. Like, if there's 20 people sitting in the room, we kind of do the reverse math on that to determine roughly how much time we would need to give each, participant a chance to speak.
It seems to me that the public input is the most important part of that. And I would prefer to see us start with the public input.
Okay.
Because even if we end at 9:30 and we didn't discuss, when we get to the regular meetings, we can discuss as long as we want to. I don't like it when it goes to 2 o'clock.
The only thing is if there are
No, that makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah, the only thing is if there are changes or updates, we want to hear about them, If the consultant has something that she wants us to hear, I think it's important for the commission to hear.
It's important for everybody to hear.
For everybody, for
Yeah, I
everybody.
agree.
So that would be the reason to
first
do that first,
And then take public
And
comment.
then take public comment, yeah.
And then.
And then,
I so appreciate you going back, Jeff, and looking at what are the options? How can we accommodate these things? Because I think that there were some of us who were concerned about the public input. And thank you very much.
and to your point, Mike, Commissioner Kelso, you had asked like why we're meeting at 7:30, and it sounds like this is what we've always done. It's kind of, we're doing it because it's all, and I think it's also like people have to work, right? So you just want to get it done before the workday, and so I think that's why.
I can tell you, for me, it's not before the workday. I
Yeah.
start at
Yeah,
6:30.
Understood. So any other discussion, or are we good with this, with what staff is recommending?
Because
It's a variation.
appears that we would leave that up to Chelsea.
Yeah, that's true. She's not, yeah, exactly, she's not here.
That she would, and I tend to favor having the communication early.
Yeah.
And we lose out at the end rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Is there any, like, here we have the public comment, then we have rebuttal. There's no need for that. It's just public comment in this case, right?
It'd just be public comment in
Public
this case, because what you would do is you'd be receiving an item, you wouldn't be acting on it, so it would just be for informational purposes at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
Is the idea that we'll finally vote in September?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Idea.
And just so I want to make sure we relay this and correct the community. So the Planning Commission's desire is to do public comment at the beginning of the mid-month meetings for how long it takes, and if there is time, then do discussion and deliberation. Did I capture that correctly?
After the updates.
After the update from the
First would be the.
consultant.
So first the update and then comment.
So similar to what we do regularly, right?
Okay, perfect.
Staff, public comment, back to the commission.
Okay, want to make sure I had that correct so we could make sure that when we talk to people, we are relaying your outline correctly.
And we'd go 7:30 to 9:30.
Yes.
We just started with a
And
blank
those-
sheet, and we reinvented the way we do it.
Exactly. And I mean, and Jeff, since you guys are deciding what the format is going to be, it could be that the commission has to bring questions or concerns to have a discussion if that's the format. You know what I mean? So we don't know that yet, right? Will we know ahead of time? So we can plan and prepare?
Yeah, we do know what the topics generally are. Elizabeth laid them out last time kind of in a I call them like a pencil sketch. We kind of outlined which ones would be at which intervals at that point in time. And your first one would be, I think, administration and procedure that would be coming up here. So we kind of have a rough idea of what that is. But again, there is some fluidity in that. As we might look at one and it might take a fraction compared to what another one might take.
Do you think their presentation will be a part of the notification of the meeting that comes out?
Yeah, so we would do all the normal things that we would do for your mid-month and your standard meetings with those in there. So we would roll, what's coming in the agendas and everything according to plan there.
Cool. And so for each one of those meetings, we start with the changes. The changes are what's coming tonight compared to last, not what we've talked about, say in August, changes going, there won't be changes as we head into September until we get all the way to the end. Right. Correct? All right.
And can we have that schedule of the topics that was presented at the steering committee meeting? Like, I know we have administrative, it's Article 16 coming up on Wednesday. And so will we know what's coming up after that?
Yeah, it's actually, the tentative schedule's been published on the project website. So it has the planning commission dates and the topics associated with those. So you can find that on the front page of that project website.
Thank you.
So at this point, if nobody has anything else, I'm going to recess to Wednesday. Is that how I say it? Sorry, go ahead.
If you're done with that miscellaneous item, I just wanted to mention something else, if that's okay.
Please.
Believe it or not, it is that time of year we're going to start planning our fall Planning Commission orientation. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up that here shortly I'll be sending out another doodle poll. I'll have some dates, probably October, maybe early November. Try and find a Friday that works for everybody and get that scheduled.
Awesome.
Thank you, Becky. Okay, we recess till. Oh, got to vote? Do we have to
I think, right?
vote for recess? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
I didn't ask for a second, sorry.
May I add, I have never seen Commissioner Rexroad more put together than tonight. Yes.
I'm not sure what that means, but I'll take it as a
It
compliment.
was meant as a
Well,
compliment.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Denny. Thank you, Jeff and Becky.
Well done, Chair.
May have a record.